Mad Movie Mark with another Mad Movie Mark movie review. As I continue my trek through the Rotten Tomatoes landscape, I am attempting to view and review all the movies that are 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. There are 206 movies, unless they decide to add more. I'm assuming that this list will take a while, so I'm assuming before we get to the end of 2022, maybe they'll add some more. I am starting off in 1920. I am going chronologically until I get to the last one in 2022. I am on number 10 out of 206. Oh God, 2006. That would be terrible. I'm on number 10 of 206. It is 1931's The Public Enemy, which is a gangster movie. It stars James Cagney as Tom Powers, Jean Harlow as Gwen, Edward Woods as Matt, Donald Cook as Mike, and Leslie Fenton as Samuel Nails Nelson. So this movie starts with Tom and Matt. They are childhood friends. They are also beginning their criminal career. They start by stealing pocket watches from stores and then reselling them. Then we fast forward a few more years. We are in the beginnings of Prohibition. They are now older and they are trying to get into the illegal distribution of alcohol. So they kind of find a friend that they know. This friend has ties with the mob, and he also, I believe, owns a bar. So it's in his best interest if he has a couple good kids, who can go out there and rustle some feathers, and kind of be hired muscles to get beer when he needs it. He eventually wants to be in charge of the distribution of alcohol. The distribution of beer back then was what Prohibition was trying to stop. That was the thing that was most heavily distributed. So they are just basically building the blocks of a criminal enterprise. And then we fast forward another few years, and Tom and Mike are now sort of even closer to top of the echelon of the mob. They are dating, I think one of them is dating Gwen, and the other one has another love interest. At this point, also Mike, who is the brother of Tom, he ended up going away to the military. He fought in, I think, World War I it was, and now he has returned a war hero while his brother is pursuing crime and mob crime, more specifically. So the later half of this movie is basically Matt and Tom kind of lavishly living this gangster life. They have a lot of money. Tom ends up having a girlfriend, which he cheats on, but then Matt ends up getting married. But it does a lot of glorifying of the life of being a gangster. But then when Matt comes home from the war, he realizes what his brother is doing. His brother is telling their mom that he has come into this money legally, and he's sharing his money with their mom. The mom is aloof about what's going on. She does not know that her son is a big mobster, and that this is ill-gotten gains that she's been getting. So there's a bit of a tug of war, animosity with these brothers towards each other. Mike does not like the fact that his brother is using this money to help his mom, that this is blood money. He does not believe in murdering in the gangster life. Well, at the other side of the spectrum, Tom says, you were in war. You murdered people all the time. Your hands are just as bloody as mine. So beneath this tussle, there's the argument over kind of the morality of war. Even though he did murder people in war, it's not considered murder. It's considered casualties. So they bring that up. They don't really come back to that later on, but it's kind of a focal point in the movie where Mike doesn't really take too kindly to that. Mike also might be having a little, PTSD from being in the war. So when he hears that, he's not, too happy about that. Later on in the movie, what's his name? Nails. Samuel Nails is kind of the leader of this operation, or he is the person that Tom and Matt, he's the top of their chain of command, really. So when he tells them to do a job, they go do a job. Any time of day, whenever, wherever, they have to go do the job. He ends up getting killed, and you would think as a member of the mob, he gets, whacked or whatever they want to call it. But no, he ends up getting kicked in the head by his horse. He gets thrown off his horse, and he gets kicked in the head. This leads Tom and Matt to go over to where the horse is. They ask how much the horse is worth. The guy says, "Oh, the horse could get up to $1,000." They give the guy $1,000. They go in the stall. They shoot the horse. But basically, Samuel Nails is kind of the guy who provided protection as well. He is the head of the family, or the head of this crime syndicate, and without him, now everyone else is vulnerable. Now the other crime syndicates can come after them because they don't have Samuel there to protect them. So it's said there's another guy that Tom and Mike have known their whole life. He basically says, "I'm going to take your guns away from you. I'm going to take all your money away from you. This way you can't go out on the streets. There's no way you'll be seen out on the streets without your gun. We're just going to lay low for a little while. We're going to let things blow over. I'm really afraid that they're going to come after us. But if we stay in this house, if we all stay together, we don't do anything stupid, I think we'll get through this and we'll be fine." So eventually, while they're in this house, there's this one girl who's the wife of the guy who's trying to keep them safe. She ends up getting Tom drunk, and while he's drunk, she ends up taking advantage of him. He wakes up and he realizes this has happened, and he says, "I can't live with this. I don't want to do this. I'm gonna leave. I gotta get out of this house. I can't stay in this house anymore." Matt says, "We're definitely not supposed to leave the house, so my suggestion would be not to do that." Tom walks out of the house. Matt walks out of the house with him, and then Matt ends up getting gunned down with a Gatling gun. That's someone who's just sitting out in front of the house waiting for them to walk out. He ends up gunning him down. Of course, Tom is upset by this, and the next night he goes to the hideout, or wherever this other gang is. He goes to their hideout with 2 guns. I got 2 guns, one for each of you, type of thing, like the Tombstone. About probably 10 people walk into the building. He goes in after them. You hear a bunch of gunshots go off, and then he kind of stumbles out of the house, definitely wounded. Almost looks like maybe he's mortally wounded. But the next scene, we see that he's in the hospital. He's alive. Now Mike is in the hospital, and his mom is in the hospital, his brother Mike. His brother Mike is being very nice to him because of what just happened. Kind of bygones be bygones. You're still my brother, and you're horrendously injured, so I'm not going to be mean to you right now. After that, we go back to the house where Tom and their mom lived. So now Mike and Tom's mom lived. Mike lived there too. So now we're at the house. We get a call. We're at the house. The guy who was originally keeping them in that house to keep them safe, he comes over and he says, "Hey, look, I hate to tell you this, but the other gang, they broke into the hospital and they took Tom at night. But we're going to do everything we can to get him back. Don't think the worst just yet. I'll offer my own, life if I have to. I'll offer to leave. And that's not something that they can, they have to do it because they want me out of here. But we'll get Tom back. Don't worry." Kind of the next day, Mike gets a phone call, and the phone call says, "We're bringing Tom home. We found him. We're bringing him home." He tells his mom. His mom is ecstatic. She goes upstairs. She starts fixing his bed. He's going to come home. There's a knock at the door. Mike goes to open the door. When he opens it, it's just Tom's wrapped up body just falls on the floor. So Tom has been murdered, and that's the entire movie. So, what do I think of this movie? Well, obviously, this movie got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, um, and it jump started James Cagney's career. This is kind of what made him a household name. After this, he kind of played, the bad guy type character or like the gangster type character. After this, um, I really like the story between Tom and his brother Mike, especially the tension that happens once Mike comes back from war. I think Mike does an incredibly good job with what he's doing. You do believe that he could be suffering from PSD, while at the same time, he's level headed enough to know that what's going on is wrong and that he doesn't want his mom involved in this in any way. He doesn't want his mom to have any of the money. So he does a very good job of kind of not only the confrontation with his brother, but also kind of the confrontation within himself. I think that's one of the better parts of the movie. James Cagney is also really good. I could see why his career kind of took off after this. You really believe him as this kind of like low life gangster who kind of really doesn't have any redeemable qualities that I can find. He cheats on his wife. He hates his brother. He's basically in it for himself. He does try to keep ties with his mother. He does try to keep his job and his family life separate. But after a while, after so much things, after you're that high up in the mob and after you're that ingrained in the mob, it's really just impossible for you to keep both family and work life separate. And I think they do a really great job of kind of developing that over time. And I also thought that Edward Woods did great as Matt. He's kind of the side character in the movie. He's basically treated as Tom's sidekick. And he does a good job with this. He doesn't try to steal the scene. He does a really good job playing off of James Cagney. So I think all around, they all do a very good job. The story's pretty good. AFI has this as number 8 on their top 10 gangster movies of all time. You can do with that what you will. I lost a lot of respect for AFI when they kept MASH on their top 100 movies of all time and on their top comedies of all time, because it's just a very terrible movie about bullies, and I don't know why it's on their list. So if you take any credence in their list, you would probably want to see this movie because it is on their top 8 gangster movies. And I think it's a nice film. I like how they develop his story. I like I said, how they make it increasingly more difficult for him to keep his family and his work life separate. And, in the end, he really does kind of get what he deserves. I do feel sorry for his mom, who didn't really know anything about this or didn't want to know anything about this. She just wanted her sons to get along. She wanted her sons to love her. And she's really left at the end of the movie with maybe a broken son with Mike after the war and after his brother dies, and then a son that has passed away with Tom. So she's kind of left with a bit of a mess at the end. And also, I'm going to be perfectly honest, and whoever watches this review, you're probably going to hate me for this, but I absolutely cannot stomach in movies where animals die, even if it's off screen, which this was. Ultimately, I realize it's the heat of the moment. Your boss just died. This is the guy who's basically responsible for you having all the power and all the money that you have, and he is now dead and you have to take it out on something. But the horse probably was a good judge of character and bucked him off and kicked him in the head, and he was doing the world a favor, to be honest. That horse deserves applause and praise and does not deserve to be shot. And even when the horse is shot, you hear him make like a very bad wailing sound of an animal dying. And I couldn't help but personally be disgusted by this scene. And like I said, people are going to think that I'm probably over criticizing this. That it's just a movie, who really cares? But I do. My fiance is a veterinarian. I worked at an animal hospital for many years. We are animal lovers, and I think that it is maybe not in 1931, but I mean, I'm going to have to watch Old Yeller later as well because that also has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm already not looking forward to that. But nowadays, I feel like killing an animal in a movie, especially an animal that's not rabid, an animal that's not a zombie, an animal that just does what it's supposed to do. And if you don't know how to ride a horse, you don't know how to treat a horse, then that's your fault. It's not the animal's fault. The killing an animal in that fashion and for that reason should not be done in movies. I think that movies have kind of gotten away from that, at least a lot of the movies that I watch, because they know that people don't like it. I think there's a rule in movies that you don't kill the dog because millions of Americans have dogs. They don't want to see one die horrifically in a movie. And this really turned me off a lot for the movie. It kind of had me thinking, like, is this a movie that I really want to recommend? Is this a movie that I really want to say I like? But I guess when it comes down to it, it's a nice mob movie. It has a nice story. The relationships between the characters are not only believable, but they are done very well. And I think that it deserves praise for what it is, for jumping the start of James Cagney. When all is said and done, even without the horse scene, I didn't think it was like an overly spectacular movie, especially after I had just watched M before I watched this. There's no way that I can give M a 9.5 and then turn around and say that this movie is a 9 or this movie is even an 8.5 because it's not anywhere near the caliber of M. I know there are two different movies, but they both have to do with killing. They both have to do, basically about a murderer. It's a different kind of murderer. This movie doesn't set the same type of tone, but if I'm judging them kind of on acting, on directing, on all merits, it doesn't come close to M. So I would give this a 7, which I would say is still a solid score. It's the lowest score that I've given so far for the 100% fresh movies. But I think this movie is deserving of a 7, and I honestly don't think that it deserves anything higher. So that's my review of The Public Enemy and my score. And I, at the moment, don't remember what the next movie is. I think it's like Machin in clothes or in dress, which I think translates to girls in clothes or dresses, but I'll have to see. It's going to be a foreign film. I think my next 4 movies going chronologically are foreign. So that'll be nice. I love a good foreign movie, and I don't think that I have seen enough, even though I feel like I've seen a lot. I can always see more. So please join me next time when I continue my trek through the Rotten Tomatoes landscape. Thank you. Have a good day.